The one artifact in the field of ufology that's created the most controversy to this day is called the Alien Autopsy. It's a film in which a medical team is dissecting a little alien body. It's been declared as one of the biggest hoaxes in UFO history. But is it? Today we're going to talk with a man who is privy to the original film more than 25 years ago, Maurizio Baiata, along with our in-house UFO researcher, Paola Harris. Paola, welcome. Maurizio, welcome. This has been crazy. I'm listening to you guys speaking in Italian here, so I don't have any idea what's going on. But
Ciao Maurizio.
Ciao Paola. Ciao everybody. Ciao.
I'm happy to have you here. This is going to be a fascinating discussion.
Maurizio was my boss for 20 years, so it's like all home week, a big reunion for me.
So let's talk about that for a moment, Paola.
Yes.
Your boss in what context? So people understand your relationship to Maurizio and the whole story.
Yeah, actually I moved to Italy for 15 years, 1994, and then I just returned in 2007. And while I was there, Maurizio found out that I had worked with J. Allen Hynek. So it's true, Maurizio. And then he said, well, no, you're coming to work for us at the Futuro agency, where we put out Area 51 magazine and X Times, and he said, we're going to send you back to America and everywhere, and you do the stories. In fact, I did Colonel Corso for you at the 50th anniversary. I returned to Roswell several times. I did the Michael Wolff case. And I was a traveling reporter for this group of people that became a family. So when I left Italy, I still write for X Times magazine because that's the only place I can deposit my stories right now. When I left Italy, I left a family. So I'm so excited to see Maurizio, my boss. I don't call him Maurizio, I always call him boss. And he always called me La Harris. Harris. He never called me Paola.
Well, and I had the pleasure of meeting Maurizio in Rome, which is the first time I met you face to face, which was such a pleasure.
Exactly.
You're such a knowledgeable and also just so articulate on the subject matter of ufology. And I would like you to tell the audience a little bit, Maurizio, about how you ended up becoming involved in the subject of extraterrestrials, UFOs, and so forth. Because in Italy, it's taken much more seriously by the populace at large than it is in the United States. Our government has kept it in the area of the giggle factor, and it's just now starting to come out. So tell us, how did this happen? How did you get involved?
I was involved with this type of research just because I'm a journalist. I was born as a journalist, basically as a music journalist, and I started writing in the very early 70s regarding rock and roll and so far, so on. Then when I moved to United States at the beginning of the 80s, I found myself involved in a different type of, let's say, environment, because I had to face myself with the reality of investigative journalism, which in Italy, at the time, we didn't know what really was, you know. I'm a journalist still for the American Guild of Newspapers.
Okay. That helps us understand. Go ahead.
And, music is a field where you can have the chance to meet lots of people, very interesting people, such as, for instance, David Bowie, who for me was sort of an alien in his type of creativity and so far, so on. And at that time, I was already into ufology, in the studies of what is out there, you know. I wanted to understand that. And my attitude was search, research, check the sources, and then, in case, write it for a newspaper or a magazine. When I got back to Italy, I had the chance to open a couple of magazines, and the stories went so far and so on.
Thank you for explaining that so everybody has a chance to know you a bit better. So essentially, hardcore journalist. So checking facts, rechecking facts, checking sources is really critical to your job. And so we're about to go down a rabbit hole that I don't know anyone could have ever fully checked out because it has the strangest bedfellows, okay? Here we're talking about throwing in a little bit of a search for Elvis Presley film, a little bit of Steven Spielberg claiming he has alien video, and other filmmakers and journalists and military and everything else involved. So I hardly know where to begin with this, so let's start at the beginning. So how did you originally find out about the existence of original footage, which then later became a template for a film that was then labeled a hoax? Okay.
Well, the beginning of the beginning was a telefax. You know, at that time we didn't have other type of communication situations. And in that teletype, somebody said that Steven Spielberg had acquired some roles, original roles of film, you know, not video stuff. And this material contained the images of an alien autopsy. So what I wanted to understand was if the story was for real. So we checked it with, from Italy, we checked it with the production company of Spielberg. Nobody gave us an answer. So I understood either Spielberg was lying or he was just going a little too fast, you know what I mean? And that's my point. I believe that Spielberg was involved in the beginning of this story, but then he magically disappeared, and the next guy came in out of the blue and into the scene was Ray Santilli.
Tell us now, Maurizio, first of all, was this around 1994, 93, 94? 1994.
Yes,
Little over 25 years ago. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, so we kind of have it set. So Steven Spielberg was very, very highly developed in his career, and if anyone was at a high enough profile level to have maybe obtained this financially and otherwise through back channels, he could have, possibly. We'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, it could, but Spielberg had a too high-ranking official position in the world of, the big cinema business.
Yes.
So somebody else probably used Santilli, who was a little lower in the status quo of the productions and distribution of images in the world.
So tell us a little bit about Ray Santilli's background, because all of this kind of hinges around him. Who was this guy?
Yeah, Santilli was a documentary producer, and his special interest was actually music. That's why we got in touch almost in the beginning, because he was confident that I understood music, and it was, we shared the same good opinion, the one to each other. In other words, we were self-confident that nobody was just, tricking around,
right,
if I can say this word. Okay. So we met in Cannes in, I believe that was between February or early March 1995.
In Cannes, France, where they held the Cannes Film Festival.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It was either MIPCOM or MIPTV. I don't recall it. We sat at the Martinez. We had a lunch, and he immediately said, well, Maurizio, we have to talk about the footage that I have acquired, which is, in fact, autopsy. He never used the word alien autopsy. He said, I acquired some film, original film, which depicts the descension of a being. That's it, a being. And he said to me, you are a ufologist? Yes, okay, good. For the rest of your life, you're going to be, staying with the doubt of what are you going to see one of these days when I can show you the material, if you come to London and I show it to you.
Okay, so how much time passed before you did ultimately go to London to see the film?
Maybe a little more than a month, because I arrived in London on April 25th.
Okay, so shortly thereafter. So now you arrive in London. Are you by yourself, or are there other people present?
No, I was just by myself.
So you and Ray Santilli met at his apartment or his home?
No, in his office.
In his office, okay.
Yeah, in Balcom Street. He had this not gigantic office.
So let's get then to the evidence that he showed you, because by then he's saying that this evidence was from the 1940s. There was some presumption it could have been from the Roswell crash. Others are saying there were other crashes that happened because there are conflicting not only stories but also visuals, okay? So let's talk about what you saw from these canisters, which by now was pretty degenerated.
Yeah, the canisters were lying on his office. There were about 15 or 16, not too large actually, probably let's say about 20 inches, no, a little more, 15 inches each, and each one of them contained a roll of film. Originally, I believe that was shot on 16 millimeters, and there was at 3 minutes each reel length, approximately. Now, he said to me, Maurizio, have a look here. So he goes like this, you open one can, it goes like this, and I'm looking to it, and he's saying, it's decaying, it's oxidizing, and we don't want to lose all the material. So most of this material will go to a laboratory where they can try to save it. But I already saw stuff as images containing, for instance, Truman was there. The president of the United States at that time was there. And, you know, the recovery team was close to a disc in the middle of nowhere in the desert, you know, and the bodies were lying out of the disc. He said, I saw all this stuff.
Okay, let's back up one moment. He's saying that they saw the disc, which was the site of the crash. They saw the bodies that had been taken out and were lying around it or had crawled out. He's saying that President Truman was present.
There.
He was present for this, so he had been flown in to witness this. Okay, this is what he's saying thus far. Okay, let's continue from there. And the recovery team were the people that were taking the bodies away, because they do. Clifford Stone, Paola has done a lot of work with Clifford. I've interviewed him. Clifford Stone has talked to us in detail about how recovery teams work with UFO crashes. So let's continue from here.
Well, if we consider that there was a precedent, a previous accident occurred in New Mexico, and that was in San Antonio, and Paola investigated thoroughly that situation, I believe 2 years before. Also, this was not Roswell.
Right.
Santilli used wrongly the word Sirocco.
Sirocco.
Sirocco instead of Socorro. Santilli told me, Maurizio, all the information I can give you is taken from a written statement by the original cameraman. And I said, what's the name of this guy? And he's still alive. He's still alive. He's in his early 80s, and he lives somewhere. I cannot disclose his, his house and whereabout and whatever, because we are just, let's say, respecting the word that we gave him. Not to disclose his name and whatever. But at that time, in 1947, he was a military cameraman. He was a combat camera operator.
Okay, now let's talk about this, because this is where the story gets sticky and tricky, because people are going to say, hold on a minute, how did that camera operator for the military make off with this film? How did that happen? You would think that it would have been in some kind of very secure vault held by the military somewhere. So what happened, as far as you know?
What happened was that later on in the I believe late 50s, around 57, 58, this guy was shooting lots of concerts, and actually he had footage of Presley.
Elvis Presley, yeah.
Elvis, exactly. So the reason why they met him was because Santilli was looking for Presley material, Presley footage.
Gotcha.
So they went, I believe they were both of them, Santilli and Gary Schofield, his partner. They went together and they met this guy at his house, his home. And after this guy said, okay, this is the stuff that I have regarding Presley, but at the end of it, I have also some other material that I want to show it to you. Before I was let's say, a private operator, I was a military operator, and it happened to me that I was called by a general to go and film a UFO crash. I mean, they didn't use this word. Let's say an airplane accident, a military airplane accident, which occurred in the night of the 31st of May, 1947, in the area of Socorro.
Okay, so this is just a couple months prior to Roswell, the Roswell crash in July of 47.
1 month exactly before.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So we have two different locations, and they're not related at all, So I don't know who got there first, but for sure, this guy, the cameraman, went there and he filmed everything. Then some months later, or weeks and months later, he said that he filmed also the autopsies in some other premises, actually in some medical laboratories or morgues,
Okay.
not on the spot. On the spot, he said that he filmed inside in a tent in the middle of the desert. He filmed the so-called metal fragments.
Fragments, okay.
Yeah, they were all lying on two tables, and they were fragments. But among these fragments were also the I beams, actually, or T beams, such as like this and like this.
Are you talking about like a little laser beam device?
No, actually, they're just construction parts.
Oh, construction parts. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, exactly.
So let me ask.
Very light
Okay.
material, and some of them said symbols on them.
Okay, so now let me ask a quick question of Paola. So Paola, 1945, right? That was San Antonio.
San Antonio, but it's near Socorro, so
And
all
so
that
then-
area, yeah.
End of May 47, Socorro. Then Roswell in early July
Yes.
of 47.
Right.
What was it about this area that you've been able to discern that created so much activity and also crashes?
Well, the hypothesis that I'm using is that this is where the Manhattan Project was in Trinity White Sands, and it's close to Socorro, and that opened up not only the nuclear age, but that opened up a lot of speculation as far as this species on this planet having become a dangerous species, and we know that any kind of bomb or any kind of use of nuclear power is going to go into other dimensions. So this is my hypothesis.
So it was the proximity to White Sands, but why were they crashing?
Well, first of all, in that time, there was radar that were portable. I mean, portable. They could go from place to place. And this radar was used as a security device because the people in the Manhattan Project, Oppenheimer and all those people, Fermi, they were worried that the Russians would gain access or knowledge about what they were doing. And it was top secret. So these radars would give information if anybody was going to infiltrate. But there was another thing, and I've noticed that for a lot of the crashes, in that New Mexico has terrible thunderstorms. With thunder and lightning. I mean, there isn't time you don't go there where it's terrible, that more than any place else I've ever been. So the possibility, if you're going to use the hypothesis that there was a lightning and thunderstorm that brings them down, is one that we've used. And the proximity of Roswell to not only White Sands, but the fact that the Enola Gay and all the 509th Bomb Squadron was housed there, which was going to drop the bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, interested something or somebody. This is the history of planet Earth. It's not just ufology, because this started a whole series of events. And I always say, just kidding around, the ETs are not on vacation.
Right.
So this started a whole series of historical events. So we're looking at a historical perspective. So I'm so glad Maurizio's giving you the details of how this came about, because the UFO community has so much disinformation on this autopsy, how it came about, so forth and so on, that when he's talking now, it makes perfect sense.
Yes, that's why I want to be very clear and detailed in how he came about seeing it. Okay, thank you for that, Paolo. So, Maurizio, back to your story, and you finally have a chance to see some of this footage with your own eyes, and then we're going to learn that what you saw was not what was later reflected in that reenactment film that became known as the hoax, but you saw two different canisters of two different events and two different kinds of bodies. And let's talk about one which we're going to show images of, because you wrote me an email this morning and you said you called Wendy and explained to her what was going on in the autopsy of this little female alien body, and you were kind of freaked out. It was very emotional for you to relay this information to her. So now we've set the stage. Tell us what you saw.
Well, first of all, I was not alone. I was with a very nice guy, nice fellow, whose name was Reg Presley. And I know that guy. I knew at that time that guy, because it was an honor for me to meet in person the lead singer of a band called the Trogs.
Yeah.
A British band, very famous in the 60s. And Reg was a very good friend with Santilli. So we went out to lunch close to Santilli's office. And then after lunch, we were just sitting on, in front of this not gigantic monitor at all, a very humble old TV set, and not even big, And Santilli goes like, okay, now I'll show you this thing. I'll leave you right here. Don't worry about that. And, he's British, but actually I don't know why that guy, when he was talking to me, he didn't ever use Italian, even though maybe knew some Italian, because Santilli's
Italian, yeah.
Is Italian,
yeah.
Okay. So I sat there with Reg Presley. The movie starts, and I'm stunned. I was really destroyed by what I saw.
What did you see?
Well, this body was just lying on this slab. Legs were pretty open, and the body was totally intact. No damages at all, So I said, okay, this is strange. Let me see a little better. Okay, 6 fingers. That's the main difference with all the stories that we know about the Greys, or the humans with 5 fingers and the Greys with 4 fingers. No, this being, this creature had 6 fingers. And they were very, very clearly, because the hands were going like this, and then I saw the feet, 6 fingers. Everything was perfectly detailed. Everything was very natural. I don't see anything that, to me, gave the idea that there was a puppet or whatever. There was a construction, not at all. And it was so poignant that Reg, I believe that he was starting either crying, or he was very, very emotional, more than me. Okay,
Let's talk
uh,
for a moment about the facial
yeah.
features. Were
Facial
they more
feature.
kind of human or more gray or a
uh,
combination?
that's what I thought. Very human. That's
Yes.
my point. Very human. Very close to a human.
But
A
small, a
little,
small body,
yeah,
small
a small
shoulders.
body, very round face, small. I mean, regular mouth, little nose, and barely visible ears. You know, thing is that by then I never seen before a real autopsy. I mean, on a human being. So when the guys, I mean, the doctors, one doctor, I believe there was only one. Maybe there was an assistant, but I was just taken by the doctor activities, which was very fast. He opened the chest of this being like this with a vertical incision, all right, and then he opened the chest and expose the organs, like everything done in very quickly. You know, it was quick, very strange
Well,
thing.
now
And
this point must have been, now at this point, just emotionally, you already struck on it, but this has to have been pretty traumatizing at this point to even watch. I
yeah,
mean, just hearing about it is,
yeah,
yeah.
and only 3 or 4 minutes, you know, after the beginning of the operation, I was just going like this. I didn't know what to say. I was, you know, mute, totally mute. Couldn't say anything at all.
No, what
And
could you say? Yeah.
the images were going on, you know, and so they opened the doctor went, the surgeon went again on the chest area, exposed the internal organs, and what I remember distinctly, he got with a sort of a instrument, he took out a triangular shaped bright object,
Bright?
which I don't know what, bright, very bright, almost luminous
Okay.
object from the chest, from the left side. What I mean, this is the creature here on the left, okay? And I don't know. Then I believe that at this time, I believe that either the operation wasn't completely shot, meaning that they cut it in sections. In fact, the entire duration of this section was less than 11 minutes.
So they may have turned
So
the camera off for certain parts and then said start shooting again when they got to
yes,
key bits. Okay.
yes,
All right.
yes.
Okay. So that was the first film, the 11-minute film of the female entity that looked distinctly humanoid, but very slim limbs, 6 fingers, humanoid features on the face, little
Yeah.
female, and short. Okay.
And no, this is important, no damages at all. Then Reg and I decided to ask Santilli, we go like, should we ask him to watch it again, please? Because 11 minutes went like, you know, a meteor.
Yeah.
And yeah, and Santilli very politely made us, watching it again. So,
Okay.
but then again, I don't recall exactly. My account is on the internet because when other researchers wanted to know if I was really watching the first autopsy, and the other guys who saw the first autopsy, meaning Colin Andrews, Philip Mantle, and I don't recall the others. We were at the end of the game, 5 people had the chance to see the first autopsy.
Let's go to the second film you saw.
Okay, the second film that I saw, we were 200 people getting together at the Museum of Roswell at the center of town. We were all invited by Santilli. Well, let's say that the reason why he did this show in London was because he wanted to sell the rights of this stuff
Sure.
all over the world, you know. So I believe that Kvyat, Bob Kvyat was there, as far as the Americans with Fox, and many others, big brass.
So a lot of film companies were represented there. Were there some from Europe as well, or was it all U.S. film companies?
As far as European that I know was Michael Hesemann and some Germans, TV representatives. The French guys were also there,
Okay.
TF2, I believe. And as far as the Italians, Rai 2, one of the most important Italian TV networks, was represented by Giovanni Minoli, and I was assisting Giovanni Minoli in getting there, and also Pinotti as far as the other.
So this was a big scene with a lot of people vying to be the first to market with this film. Okay, go ahead.
He gave to us a press kit where it was very clearly stated that that was the so-called Roswell footage.
Roswell?
Which is footage.
Roswell footage, okay.
Which I believe is a very, it's a major mistake because it wasn't Roswell at all, first of all. Okay. And the story of the Anvil operation. The Anvil operation was the story, was the operation, the military operation, the recovery operation, in which also the cameraman was involved for filming. You know, his business was filming it. So we read that stuff, and then lights down, and then the projection of the second autopsy, 18 minutes. Technically all different as far as the incision, for instance, but also the most startling difference was that this body, the second body, was heavily damaged. It had a big wound on his right.
Big gash on the thigh, yeah.
Yeah, big. The bones were exposed, you know, and it was a bone there. Also, technically, as I said before, the incision was performed with a very different technique, which is currently still in use in the modern morgues, you know, well, by the way, I went to the Roman morgue, and I saw two autopsies, and the first one was performed exactly with the same technique.
Now, what was the difference in the two techniques?
Well, the second one, it's a Y incision. 1, 2, 3.
Okay.
From here, from one shoulder to the abdomen, the other shoulder down here, and then go down to the lower abdomen.
Okay.
Then the reason why they use this is to expose the rib cage very quickly, and then cut the rib cage, you know, open the rib cage and extract the organs. So this is what happened during the second autopsy. Plus, there was the sewing of the skull.
The sawing of the cranium, yeah.
Exactly. But not anything like they were doing in the other autopsy. That's it. And I don't recall either if the triangular bright object was extracted also in the second autopsy. I don't recall it.
Now, it seems from looking at the Alien Autopsy film, which ended up being the recreation of it, that it may have been gender neutral. You couldn't really tell what sex it was per se. Yeah.
The little opening was still there, so probably this was either a neutral or a puppet. I don't know that.
Yeah.
I definitely don't know that.
Yeah.
I don't know if Santilli really had the chance of having the real material, the good material, and then being forced because being forced to reconstruct, to rehearse everything, gave him the task to rehearse to a director, and you know, and having the second autopsy released, inserting some original frames into the entire.
So what what I'm hearing then is he had fragments. It's possible that he had fragments of the original film, and then they built in the recreation films within it to create what looked consistent with what the original film had.
Exactly.
So,
That's
yeah.
his point that he maintains still now.
Okay.
He keeps, well, he changed his version many times. And I don't think that is because he's delusional or a confused person. Santilli is very, very intelligent. He made the deal of the century. Absolutely. I tell you what, I don't know the exact figures, but we are talking about um, tens of $1 million.
Oh yeah, of
out of
course,
one,
of course. This
yeah,
is the hottest
out of
thing out
one
there, right?
business. Yeah. Okay.
Well,
All
I have
right.
a quote from him which says, quote, "I maintain the original film was real, and as stated, we restored and recreated elements of the film to give it the look of a cohesive autopsy." So that's what he says. There's no one that can really verify it besides him. He's the only one that had access to the original. But the point is, this film was then made as a recreation to show people what had happened in that autopsy. What happened politically after this came out? Now everybody's fighting among themselves. Now we're saying the biggest hoax in UFO history, and on and on. So sitting from where you were sitting, watching this whole show, essentially, what happened?
I was very angry at Santilli and also the other ufologists present who attended the showing at the London Museum. Were very disappointed because we were expecting other images. We were expecting what Santilli promised, like for instance Truman and the disc embedded in the soil in the middle of nowhere, and so far so on. The recovery team, not at all. I mean, not even a frame of it. So what? He also didn't state anything at all. I mean, he was somewhere else. He was the magician. Santilli was the magician, not Spiros Melaris.
You've just introduced a name our audience doesn't know. So now, say you were talking about Santilli being the magician. Explain what that means. And when you said not Spyro, so please go ahead and explain what happened here.
The reason why I mentioned Spiros Melaris is because this guy is a great magician. He's seemingly is very, very proficient, very good in creating special effects. He contends that he is the director of the second autopsy.
The alien autopsy, we know, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That he shot in a flat out in, I believe it's called Camden in London,
yes.
somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay, somewhere there, and that he used his friends and also his mom. I don't know. Everybody was there to shoot that material, and he gave the new footage, the new videos to Santilli, and that's it. I mean, and he disappeared for about 10 years. Then in 2006, something happened. Santilli was interviewed by a chap named, in a British program called Eamon Investigates in Great Britain. He was interviewed, and he said for the first time that material was no bueno, no good, all right, and that something else happened, such as that he had to recover what he could, and that the original frames were inserted in in a movie that was shot by somebody else. That John Humphreys, creator of special effects, very good creator of special effects, created the creature, the second creature.
Yes, yes.
That the body was totally destroyed. I mean, the puppet was totally destroyed and buried somewhere in, I don't know where, in London. That all the guys who participated to the shooting were, intended not to word anything at all out from their mouth, for the rest
So
of their life.
they had all declared kind of secrecy around working on this project, yeah?
Exactly. By then, I believe that the name of Spiros Malaris came out, because he was the director of that shooting. Also, the others kept their mouths shut. Even a certain Garrett, who played the role of the guy with a mask on behind a window, a glass window. He was observing from, out of the section room. He was observing everything. Now, getting to, for instance, how can you reproduce exactly all the, instrument and specs of a situation like that? It takes you years to get to have that phone with a curly wire exactly there, or the watch, the
Clock on the wall, yeah.
clock on the wall, all the surgical instruments exactly reproducing the ones used by. All right, the Italians, conducted by me, were so stubborn in research, for instance, to research the table, I mean, the slab where the creature was lying, and dissected. None was able to find the table.
So Maurizio, because we could talk for hours about all of this part, the infighting and accusations among people, where money went, where money didn't go, ufologers who put other ufologers' work down, and it goes on and on and on. There are a lot of shadowy figures here, and there are a lot of really wonderful figures here. In the end, when somebody watches this film, Alien Autopsy, are they seeing any kind of somewhat accurate recreation of that second film, in your opinion?
Yes, I think so, because what is really important to understand in this story is that nobody prior to the Santilli footage ever came out with the aliens, six fingers alien.
Right.
This is major. This is very important, and the idea that some of us came regarding this very peculiar thing of the six fingers is because maybe in the future human beings will have more fingers in their hands, and feet. Yeah, maybe.
Maybe
Or
this is some future iteration, yeah.
Maybe. But there is also one important, peculiar story to talk about briefly. In the year 2000 and something, a movie came out. Santilli was involved, not in the production, but somehow he was involved with this British company called QWERTY Films.
How do you say Q-U-E-R-T-Y?
Q-U-E-R-T-Y.
Yeah,
QWERTY.
QWERTY, yeah,
Right.
like a QWERTY keyboard.
QWERTY Films produced this movie called The Alien Autopsy. The Alien Autopsy reconstructs from scratch everything regarding the story. The role of Santilli and Schofield are played by two comic actors, British comic actors. And the story goes such as, we found that we have to go to United States in order to buy that material. We go there, we see that stuff, and then when we get back the canisters, everything is, unfortunately, wasn't usable anymore. The cameraman saved one last canister, containing 40, a minute and a half of footage, which is black and white footage, which is inserted in the end of the comic movie called Alien Autopsy, that went in theaters all over, and that you can buy in the, in the video stores eventually, or buy whatever. This minute and a half images in black and white show many militaries surrounding a body lying on a slab on the floor, open air. This scene is shot outside, and all these guys are, going like crazy around this body. You understand that the body has 6 fingers because we, with Alberto, our graphic director, were able to find that detail of the 6 fingers is there, but the images are just a little blurred, Mm-hmm. And a truck is arriving, a military truck. All these guys are wearing either uniforms or other suits. Which you can say maybe these are people were there because they had to be there in that moment.
Mm-hmm. In a professional capacity, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and the movie ends like that.
Okay. We've written this down. Crowdy Films, The Alien Autopsy, a British comedy. Okay, somewhere in the mid-2000s. So, in summary, because we're starting to run toward the end of our conversation, and I want to ask a couple questions of Paola. Again, in piecing these kinds of stories together, you're both researchers and you're both journalists. First of all, what you shared about the first film that you saw is very moving. And whether anyone ever sees a frame of that or not, you witnessed that, that's your story. You go through the rest of your life with that experience. And so I accept that as credible because you're a credible human being. So anyone can do what they wish with this. The second one is mired in all kinds of stuff, but let's just say it was representative of a being in another film. And now people can see a little tints of original footage in this Alien Autopsy British comedy if they wish. Let that stay in its area of controversy. When it comes to piecing these stories together, because you do have such an odd mixture of individuals with all these different agendas for being in this field, some deliberately for disinformation, some deliberately as professional skeptics, some as almost delusionally trying to say everything's real, it's all real. And then you have you guys, you researchers, in there trying to piece it all together. And that's when it comes to the field work that you do and you have done, such as the due diligence in going to London and far beyond, and that you do. And I just want to get to something with you on this, Paola, when it has to do with the Roswell crash, because you actually went out of your way, as you always do, boots on the ground. You went and met with just to talk about the Roswell crash as a pixel of information to complete this, the Roswell story. You went and talked with the mortician.
With Glenn Dennis, yes, because in those days I was working for Maurizio at the time, and so I came out of Italy, and Glenn Dennis wasn't doing a whole bunch of talking. He was in his 90s, and everybody was trying to reach him, but I think the best representation of Glenn Dennis is in Paul David's movie, Roswell, because what he was asked to do, and he told me this personally, and when somebody tells me something personally, it comes from the source,
right.
That's when I really pay attention. He told me that the military had called him and that had asked for 6 children's caskets. 6 children dead. Mm-hmm. Of course, these beings are short and, small and everything, and he asked the logical question, where was that automobile accident? Where's the accident? Because I want to go out there.
Right.
And he was told, no, just have them ready because we need them. But if you watch the several films on this, Glenn did go out to the field. Mm-hmm. He did have a friend who was a nurse who sat with him. And she said that it was all, classified top secret. But as she was talking to him on a napkin, she drew a picture of a classic gray, and she showed it to him, and then she burned it. I think there was a candle or something. We've seen that image.
Right.
And Glenn, like Walter Haut, who was the information officer.
So let's talk about Walter Haut.
Yeah.
When the crash occurred in 1947 in New Mexico, he was the public information officer.
Exactly.
At the time for the military. For whom? the local
for the
government,
military,
for the military.
for the military. And he put out the first newspaper, which everybody buys right now, that a flying
And here
saucer.
we can see these guys together, okay, in this photograph right here.
Yeah. Actually, these men have passed on.
And Clifford Stone is in the middle, sitting down.
And then let me give credit to Tom Carey and Don Schmidt, because that's all they do. And
they're on the right in the photo, dark hair.
Yeah, and they've written all the books on Roswell because they, as they say, it's a race with the Undertaker. This happened so long ago, they have to get all the witnesses.
Before they all die. So now Walter Haut, however you say his name, H-U-T, you spoke with him.
I spoke with him. He was at the time, he's the founder of the UFO Museum with Julie Schuessler. Right. They're both gone. I don't think he could have come out with it, but when he died, he left a testament, a will, to Don Schmidt that said he physically saw the bodies. And I happened to be in that hangar. They open it up every once in a while, and I was shown in the back room what looked like a kind of a separate room that had slabs on it. Actually, it was almost like a refrigerated room. If they would have had to refrigerate bodies in those days, and I was told that's where the bodies were. So Walter Haut left a deathbed testimony. He had seen bodies.
Because what happened originally is he said Roswell crash had happened. Then he very quickly was made to retract the statement.
Exactly.
Then we got into the weather balloon story, like all this
Project
stupid stuff,
Mogul, and everybody's hypothesis.
Exactly.
So I think what's important to remember, Regina, is that a lot of the truth is hidden in the disinformation that comes out.
Yes.
So what needs to happen with people is discernment. How much of that story is true and how much of it has been contaminated.
Yes.
Just like this film footage.
And that's why I so respect what you do, Maurizio, and what you do, Paola, to be able to go and actually take the time to have firsthand experience of these things, to piece it together and get away from the disinformation stories on both sides, get away from the delusion. You have invested more than half your life, I think, researching this now. And you've done it, you've gone through your own phases of growth and learning along the way, but you've always insisted on one thing. You want firsthand accounts. You don't want to hear other people's hearsay and just read other people's books, which I respect immensely. So what does all this mean in the larger context for humanity as far as you're concerned?
Well, first of all, on a personal level, I think I was destined to do this because this isn't normal work. So I was destined to do this, meeting Hynek, working with Maurizio, and I think that this is probably the most important question for humanity. I will say we are not alone. I mean, he alluded to that. It means a lot on a psychological level, on an institutional level. Maybe our institutions need to change. On an educational level, that we are part of something greater, that humanity is part of something much greater. And then, like Maurizio, I've had my own contact situation, which opens up a whole spiritual level. So, and it makes us really look at consciousness as maybe the motivating factor for everything we do, and certainly for everything I do.
Absolutely. Well, Paola, again, thank you for your many years of hard work. And so until we see you here on set with us again, thank you. To get this and so much more, you can go to paolaharris.com. Until next time, thank you for joining us here on Open Minds.